to start by just asking people, let's first of all define what we mean by a 9 through 14 integrated and aligned pathway. And then what I'd like to do is find out who in the room has experience with such a pathway, because I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about it. So let's see, I may even, now I need a copy of this. Oh, okay. What happened is I gave them something else to duplicate and they did this instead, but this will work just as well. So what we mean by a 9 through 14 pathway is that students come in, they could be in a middle school that feeds into a 9th grade, but what we mean is that there is a commitment to prepare everyone for a post-secondary credential, whether a certificate, a 2-year degree, or a 4-year degree. But we also mean that there is sufficient career advising and advising in general so young people can be thinking about where they're headed on the post-secondary pathway, and that there's an acceleration opportunity. So the data that really makes us very committed to the idea of early college or concurrent enrollment or dual enrollment, whatever you want to call it, is that particularly in states like this one where your community college system is impacted, but all across the country, the high demand career programs, and probably the majors in the 4-year sector as well, but mostly in the community colleges, are filled with highly motivated people who know that getting into a nursing program or a radiology technology program is going to get them where they want to go. So your average 18-year-old appearing in a community college is often the last one, especially with I know you've changed priority registration here, but still, the last one to get into those high demand programs. They may not be counseled into them. And if your state is anything like mine, Massachusetts, if you get into the community college and you need developmental courses, if you can get through those, you then need to pass, say, in the STEM fields, the basic science courses before you can even apply for the health courses. This is not a good formula for ill-informed high school students that are only middly motivated. So when we talk about 9 through 14 integrated pathways, we say a much, much more deliberate connection with a post-secondary institution at an earlier stage. And JFF, where I work, we've led the National Early College High School Initiative for over a decade now. Those started out as small schools, 400, 500 students, where they're designed so that everyone could graduate with an AA degree. Where we've come now, and what we always thought is that was not going to solve the college completion credential problem. What we wanted to see was how much college credit, if you were counting on that as a way of securing students' entrance and at least retention in higher education, how much college credit and what was the minimum that you could provide that would be a reasonable assurance students would get through post-secondary. So we now say about 12 college credits. So when you're thinking about a 9 through 14 pathway, we're actually thinking about somewhere in the range of 12 college credits, and probably, if we know what trips people up, passing the entry-level college for credit math, not dev ed math, and maybe one career course and a couple of other courses. So that's what we mean by an integrated pathway. What we also mean is the young person is in an agreement with the post-secondary institution. That young person is guaranteed a space in the program. In other words, the entrance to the pathway starts in high school. So I don't know the extent to which people in this room have experience with anything like this or that's this integrated. I know that because of the impacted community college programs, some people have even stopped doing concurrent enrollment in the community college sector. But California, with a few glitches that Andrea and I know well, does have a reasonable concurrent enrollment policy on the books. And there are, as I say, here, I think there are 42 early colleges, and there, as I was talking to people today, some dual enrollment. So what I'd love to hear is a couple of examples, if you have them, for people in this room about 9 through 14 pathways that do have concurrent enrollment and have some deliberate design. Are there people here who are working on such things? Yeah, so let's start way back there. Say who you are, too.
Yeah, I'm Nanda Shorsky. I'm the Executive Dean of Workforce and Economic Development at the College of Marin. I'm also a former WIB director. And so we have our WIB, we're really good friends, and they're here today, too. We worked on, the discovery was, of course, that students were taking advantage of articulated courses. Oh, and one of my colleagues from the county office is here, Dan Zeich. We would have articulated courses, the great legacy of tech prep, but none of the students were taking advantage of the articulated courses. So what we started doing was actually enrolling the students in the course that had been articulated. And then when the semester ended, then they actually got that credit on their transcript as they completed it, because the articulated system did not work at all. And what we're doing is we're making sure that those first courses that they take actually apply to some sort of certificate. Great. So that it actually, that they can have the units toward that on their credential. And we went from like 2 or 3 articulated courses being taken advantage of about 3 years ago, and now we have hundreds of students who have their transcript shows their credit class on it. We're hoping we can get more in the academic side. We tried doing philosophy and had to push back on it, but we really want to be able to do it in some of the core classes.
And who's paying the tuition?
We are waiving the tuition.
Okay, so that's one of the good things about the California system. Community colleges can waive tuition, and I also just wanted to make a point to reinforce the point that you made. Tech prep was sort of the grandmother of really strong concurrent enrollment programs. The problem was that you had to bank the credit. It was only usable at the institution that provided it. It wasn't transferable. We're in 3.0 of concurrent registration concurrent enrollment when we're thinking about these pathways. Other people who have experience with 9 through 14 pathways? Yeah.
Hi, Mark Hodges, Santa Cruz County ROP. We have a strong medical connection with our community college. Students take medical technology, health careers at the high school level, move on to our adult medical assisting program. Some of them move on to Cabrillo College, our community college's medical assisting program. So we're actually working together, but in competition at the same time for students. And then after that, they move on to the nursing program. So it's been pretty successful. We've had a little challenge with the articulation in that students complete the articulation, but then it's their responsibility to go to the community college and file the paperwork. And we found that students don't do that. So we're actually pushing for dual enrollment if that's a possibility for us.
So let me just get the terminology you're using. So when you say articulation, what's the difference between that and concurrent enrollment?
The articulation is the student has to complete certain coursework to qualify for the college credit.
Yeah.
They then take the paperwork from their high school to the community college, and that's where we lose.
I see. So under concurrent enrollment, what happens is the student is enrolled as a matriculated college student, which, by the way, from our much research on early colleges, is a very, very useful thing for students, even with 9th graders in early college, to have a college ID. And that identity early on is very symbolic to them of the pathway that they're on. Okay, thanks, that's helpful. Other people was, back there?
Well, Robin Schrift, one of the 9 learning.
Okay, great.
But from experience, that you actually hit it on the head, there's too many terminologies out there.
Yeah.
There's different people that take concurrent enrollment. There's the escrow of units until the kid actually enrolls in the community college, who pays for it. And we're actually looking at something locally that looks at maybe the students being dual enrolled. So they're taking the course at the high school, taught by a community college qualified professor, which means they're getting high school credit and college credit at the same time at the high school campus, but the college is able to get the attendance, sort of the units earned for those kids because of where we offer the course at the end of the day outside of instructional minutes. But I think one of the unwritten rules of the dual enrollment or the course credit is the hinge upon the actual professor at the college is the stakeholder or the gatekeeper on whether that course is provided units or not. And that's, I think, I'm just going to say that's outdated, and that's a flaw in the system. It's really easy to talk about all these systems, but it still comes down to a person setting their beliefs about what's right and wrong and how it works. I'm not faulting them, it's how it is. And it's we can have the best plans, but all of a sudden the conversation comes to a stop.
Yeah.
It's a distractor in a lot of these, especially when you get to the academic courses.
That is, so you're saying that the individual instructor has, okay, so maybe what we ought to, so maybe, I'll tell you this. I have spent a lot of time on dual enrollment. My husband, who you met if you were here this morning, calls me the dual enrollment queen. This is not a good thing, to have an individual instructor. So I'm all for grassroots democracy and all of that, but some standardization is necessary if you're going to actually articulate across these systems. So what the bar is really high in what I believe the RFA is going to ask for in regard to 9 through 14 systems. So it means that we need to identify what the barriers are that exist in the state right now and figure out either how you're going to work around them or how you're going to ask that they be fixed. So, and when I say the bar is high, I believe that what will be asked for is not just dual enrollment, but dual enrollment pathways that are aligned to a particular career pathway, and that include work-based learning. So that's a tall ask that you're all going to need to think about. So let's do this for a moment. I think it would be useful to identify some barriers, and we have a trusty person here taking notes, and the barriers notes should be really good. So we heard already. Do you know this, Andrea? I have the dual enrollment legislation on here, but it doesn't say anything about individual instructors getting the yes or no over a course. So can someone explain that? Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I can explain it, but I see it as an issue also because my son took classes in college when he was at the community college when he was in high school, and then he had more than enough units to graduate in the grade 11th, which created a problem because he wasn't mature enough to go to college. And so I think that is an issue that needs to be addressed. Are we going to be sending them here to college?
Yeah, that's a different issue, but let's talk about barriers in this first one. In most dual enrollment legislation in other states, if there is a quality control mechanism, it is that the instructor has to have the same credentials or acceptable credentials to the post-secondary institution. So if it's a high school teacher, they need to have a master's degree in the content area. That's pretty much universal, and the community college has to approve it. The other quality criterion that seems quite widespread is that the final exam or paper, whatever is the exit standard, has to be the same for the high school course and the college course. Those seem to be good quality control mechanisms, and I've never heard this thing about instructors needing to approve. So you want to shed some light on this?
Yes, I'm from Chabot College, community college in Hayward.
Yeah.
And I think what the gentleman was referring to was, AB 1746. But it is our 10 plus 1, what the academic senate calls the 10 plus 1, which is the things that are under the purview of instructional faculty only. One of the things is curriculum, and so whether or not a course is accepted, articulated, modified, revised, approved in whatever in the community college system for credit must be signed off by that individual faculty member, a tenured faculty member. So if a particular faculty member says, well, that class, I don't agree with the curriculum, I don't think it's up to standards, or just philosophically, it could be for a number of reasons, but if they decide that, no, I don't want to cooperate, then you're kind of the conversation stops.
Okay. So let's stick with this issue of barriers to concurrent enrollment, because I think I've been in California, not 24 hours yet, but we did a little prep, and we're beginning to hear that there is some significant interest in taking a good hard look at the dual enrollment, the concurrent enrollment legislation and code as it now stands, and making some changes to it. So this is a good moment to take a look at what some of the other barriers are. So let's get a few more. Yeah, right over here.
I provide services for students in areas that tend to be remote. Some parts are remote, some are not. And the community college districts kind of overlap. And we had some concern when a student has the opportunity to articulate with one community college, that the other community college said, no, that's our territory, you can't do that. That was a challenge. And the other piece is with the dual enrollment, if we have a high school student that enrolls and is also on the roster for the community college, if that student does not complete the program, they could have an F on their transcript at the college level. And that's a concern.
Yeah. That is a concern in other states as well. I think the way the jury decided on that one is if you're going to take a college course, you get a college degree, a college credit, and a college grade, and that's part of your grown-up responsibility to make that decision. I don't think you're going to get around that one.
But it may need to be scaffolded where the student has a sequence of courses leading up to that capstone that is concurrently enrolled, so that they know full well what they're involved in before it gets
So one of the design principles has got to be adequate support starting in 9th grade and preparation for taking a college course. There are all kinds of mechanisms that we've seen across the country. Sometimes, for example, I don't know if there's anyone here from San Diego, but San Diego City College has 4 early colleges that are contiguous to the community college. There's a lot of co-teaching that goes on. So the college teacher is in the class with the high school teacher 2 days a week. And things like what's a syllabus, when are office hours, all the college 101 stuff gets taught in high school. Go ahead.
We put together our middle college program, which are fairly popular in California, where our students are actually at the community college during the day. And it's been very successful in the last 8 years. The only problem we've run into, there's very little standardization of these programs. So we went to look at other models. They were all completely different from one another, and there wasn't a lot of guidelines on how to set it up, how to administer it. So we kind of, fake it till we make it, type of it's kind of like put the tires on the car while you're rolling down the freeway. So that's one thing that I think could really be looked at, is that middle college concept, get some standardization of practice and of expectations.
Yeah, there's even confusion about what's middle college and what's early college. I think what we ought to do is stick to the term concurrent enrollment, because that's the term that shows up in the legislation, right? Yeah. Okay, more back.
Repeat, standardization across community colleges would be really great to solve a lot of problems that duplicated work.
Yeah, so that probably is a big challenge. There are some standard rules now. One is that the community colleges can waive tuition. A second is the agreement around seat time, which nobody has mentioned, which seems to be something that needs to be fixed. A third is around summer course taking. There's a 5% cap on the number of students in any school grade, in any grade that can take a concurrent enrollment course during the summer, which is when a good deal of career exploration with a college course or taking math or college English could happen. So those are issues. Back there.
I know Senator Hancock's legislation is being drafted now around concurrent enrollment and some of the challenges.
Who are you?
I'm Rachel from Career Ladders Project.
Great.
Before that, I was with Gateway to College National Network. So in that work, actually, that's where the legislation was kind of began with Peralta Community College District, and they wanted to kind of replicate the success they had in cost sharing between Oakland Unified and the Laney College, Gateway to College program. But one of the things that we couldn't agree on much because those models are very different, to your point around early and middle college, there's about as many as you can imagine. But the one thing that we did agree on was the 11-unit cap being a barrier, that there are a lot of students that want to actually exceed that. And so that's actually, the legislation is now drafted, it has that included, but there were very few things that we could agree on that would actually benefit all of the models in the state.
Yeah. So and maybe one of the things that the state needs to take a look at is some states, Texas for example, has you can get an early college designation, and it is very clear what the guidelines are and what's standardized. So let's hear a few more comments way back there.
I was just going to follow up. Dan Zeich from the Lorraine County Office of Education. I thought I'd follow up on the gentleman's comment from Antioch regarding personnel in the college. I think, it is an important point. Relationships play into this very much. It happens at the high school level as well in those relationships, and making those connecting points. And I think some of the areas where we've had success with our agreements are where we've had both the high school instructor and the community college instructors work together on joint syllabi, as well as sharing some of the same textbooks to help bridge those career and academic expectations. So just a few thoughts on how to support that work.
I think that if we're going to do anything at scale in California, it can't be that every college teacher sits down with a high school teacher and there's an approval process for every single course, because you're never going to get any kind of scale that way. So that has to be solved with whether it's negotiation with the faculty senate or with something between the community college system office and CDE. That is not going to work. I'm going to take someone else because you already spoke back there.
Well, I just want to throw out, in our county, they call it credit by exam. That's what they're basing the articulations with the high school classes. And so as you've heard, our teacher, my teacher, I'm Sandy Walton with Buchanan ROP, our teachers sit down with meetings every other year with the college staff, and they go over what does the exam look like or what's the final project look like. And so they have to decide that they agree that whatever that is for the final grade, it meets their credit by exam requirement at that college.
Okay, so let me put out a vision for what would be helpful, I think, if we're talking about this particular career pathways trust funds and what I believe the goals are going to be. So a lot of what you're talking about is sort of random acts of kindness to make it easier for students to connect to college. What we're talking about when we say we have a vision of an aligned pathway is that suppose it's in healthcare, and suppose you want to offer radiology technology, a 2-year nursing degree, and health informatics, or then what you need to do is have an agreement with the community college where all of those pathways are spelled out before any student is enrolled. And those pathways need to include an agreement that if the student completes the courses that is with additional supports early on, that student gets enrolled in the rest of the pathway. So that's sort of what we're thinking about. I could show you, and on your piece of paper here is some of the kinds of design work that are going on in other parts of the country. So if you look at let's see, the yellow arrow, which is on page 2. I can barely read this because my old eyes are bad. Maybe we'll be able to see it if I put it up there. I'll try. I hope you all bear with me. It's hard to be informal with all of you in a big conversation like this, but I think it's better than my talking at you. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Oh, okay. So what you see here is a plan for, this is Bunker Hill Community College, and this is a healthcare program, and they are just beginning now with 9th and 10th graders to align the curriculum, and you begin to see all the under grade 11 medical terminology, for example, and then you begin to see clinical internship, CNA, and where it says workforce eligible, an internship, and then you see the clinical internship. This is all mapped out before students get into it. And then you'll begin to see in the next slide some career areas: medical aid, medical assistant, practical nurse, registered nurse. That is those are stackable credentials, which every student who's in this healthcare program will have access to. So when we're talking about 9 through 14 aligned pathways, you don't want to be giving your students a smorgasbord and lots of choices. You want a career pathway. And as I understand the new priority registration legislation, students will have priority registration if they have an academic plan. Do people know about this? You have to have an academic plan. You have to go to an orientation, and the same kinds of things I think should apply for high school students. And then, let's see what so the next slide, which you can see, shows what the examples are for how you can move forward. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about for an articulated pathway. So, and then I've got also, these are again hard to see up here. This is an IT pathway. These are and the courses across the bottom are all the technical courses. That is all mapped out. And I think our experience and the research that Andrea knows better than I, Davis Jenkins' research, and now Melinda Karp's research, says that if you do two things: one is go with the student's interests, and two, have a structured pathway from high school and through community college, the chances that the student will complete are much, much higher. They can always opt out, but the default should be in a pathway. Do you want to add anything?
The only thing
here, I'm gonna
here.
The
only thing I would add is the research looking at structured pathways focused on students. What they did was they saw that students who were in structured pathways in community colleges were more successful than the students who weren't. And so I think the cautionary note is that there's likely the chance that the students who are in structured pathways self-selected to a certain degree. And so I would just caution people to make sure that you take a good look at the supports and the other factors that can help students who might not have traditionally opted in or been able to opt in to structured pathways to make sure that they can succeed in those pathways. So I think it's about integrating supports into those pathways as well.
So I'm going to just take them. Oh, go ahead. Over there.
I was just going to say, just going back to the barriers, one of the issues to me seems to be the fact that we have virtually no counselors left in our high schools. Our ratios are just off the map. So when we're talking about, steering kids and guiding them and giving them career advice, many high schools just don't have that capacity. So I think that's a huge issue that is even kind of before you even get to this step. If you can't even get kids in front of a counselor more than once a year for 10 minutes, then.
Are any districts, community colleges using, at least partially successfully, any kind of web-based or computer-based tools for career selection and advising? So what are people using, and can it be supplemented with a human being? What are people using? Naviance, Plato. Yeah. So, okay, so let us, shall we mark this as a barrier, that there needs to be, if you're going to apply for this funding, whether this funding or the Youth Careers Connect funding or SB 1070, and you're going to be deliberate about career pathways, you can't do it without some kind of advising. So you're going to have to build into whatever your planning is some way to deal with advising, whether it's redistributing some staff responsibilities in a new way, taking a deep breath and saying we're going to use some of the funding for counseling and figuring out how you might sustain that after the grant is over. I would put that as a big barrier. And there are, of course, electronic platforms that are helpful. I happen to Connect Ed has one that's a homemade one that is interesting. I don't know, Aaron, do you want to say anything about that, or no? About the Connect Ed Studios?
Yeah, I mean, it really integrates with a lot of other tools that have just been developed across the state to try to, I mean, the way we see this is you should have a continuum of sort of experiences, and at the 9th grade level, that needs to be around awareness and exploration. So it could be a day in the life video around an entire pathway for digital media. You can see a bunch of careers around that, and it could also just be exposure to it's also supposed to tie industry leads into that as well. So I think it's pretty comprehensive, and we're still kind of trying to comply with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one area where a combo of good technology and less human interaction than we had when we had 100 students per guidance counselor is where we're going to end up. But it can't be done without human intervention and some really robust and good technology. Yeah, go ahead.
One other barrier, I think that, especially since you're talking about dual enrollment, is that there's, I think coming down the pike, or if it's already actually implemented, but there's going to be a financial aid cap. At 6 years, and so if they get too loaded with units in high school, they might not make it to UC, or they'll make it, but they'll use up their financial aid.
Yeah.
So you have to be judicious about where, when, and how many credits are actually on it.
Excellent point. I'm going to just show you because I think it's useful. Some of this is discouraging. I'm going to just show you, it's in your PowerPoint, a little bit of the data about early college, because there's early college data and there's some very robust studies of dual enrollment. And in fact, if you were up early and reading the Chronicle of Higher Education, as we were this morning, since we were up at 5 o'clock, it being 8 o'clock in Boston, there's a new study that just came out today using data from the National Student Clearinghouse showing that, first of all, concurrent enrollment has doubled in the last decade to from 1 million to more than 2 million courses per year taken, which is a good sign. And secondly, the data shows that students who come to college, I mean, it makes sense, come to college with college credits, have higher completion rates. In fact, the 6-year, if I'm remembering this right, the 6-year completion rate for students who had college credits when they entered would boost the whole nation's completion rate by 2 percentage points, which is fairly significant. And you probably know this research too, Andrea, that there's Florida data that shows a real bump with students with dual enrollment, particularly Latino and African American students. Other data points?
In the student success courses, particularly in Florida, they saw a big bump.
Yeah. So I'm going to just, this is really, I'm going to just say a word or two about the data, which starts on slide 7 there, because the fact that you all are here means most likely that you're already believers in some form of 9 through 14 pathway, and you're going to have to go back and convince other people that structured pathways with concurrent enrollment actually is going to get you where you want to go, which is higher high school graduation, higher student retention rate, and higher college or credential completion. So there are these various robust studies, both of early college and dual enrollment. And we, JFF, my organization, which is a national nonprofit based in Boston, where Adelina Garcia works with me, who's passing this out, we were the original intermediary for the Gates Foundation investment in early colleges. So we also had foundation support for doing what many people don't do and can't get funding to do, which is keeping data. We had a student information system, so we've been following students for over a decade. And as you know, Senator Steinberg said this morning, he wants to be able to show results in 4 months. Well, good luck. Good proposals, yes, may be the evidence, but it takes 10 years to really get a set of students through a program and really see whether you're making a dent in college access, retention, and completion. So this is sort of to give you a little bit of courage as you go forward, and to show that there are other things that you can do to boost college access and retention and completion. But the dual enrollment early college data is quite strong. So if you look at this, the first slide, the data is based on about 300 schools now serving around 100,000 students, and they're in 26 states. So that's a fairly good sample. It's what we would call a reasonable existence proof that says that we can count this as reasonable success. So here's what the numbers tell us. High school, this is actually, I think, rather similar to what I heard this morning, or the completion rates for your partnership academies, but high school graduation rate of early colleges is about 92%, which is way higher given that the students are majority low-income students of color, and it's many in the category we would call at risk. The college enrollment rate is about immediately after high school is about 86%, and interestingly, about this is a slightly old data, but about half of the students who complete their high school diploma in an early college graduate with a full year of college credit, which that's a lot if you say half of a cohort, and about a quarter earn a full AA degree. So as the person back there, just to make a comment about social emotional development and readiness for college, what we see is a good number of those students who get associate's degrees do go on to a four-year institution as juniors. We've had tremendous success on the Texas-Mexico border, where we've worked for very many years with almost totally Spanish-speaking Latino population. They're whole high school districts where large numbers of kids are graduating with a AA degree. But we also see some of those students taking those credits and starting college as freshmen or sophomores. And that seems fine to me. It means that they're very well prepared. It means that they are confident they can do the work because they've done college work already. And they may want to be in a post-secondary institution for 2 or 4 years. And I'm going to just look at one other data point here. So this is just comparison data, and you have these, and I'm happy to make the slides available to you if it's useful as you think about what you want to do when you go back into doing design mode. So I'm sorry, I made a mistake. The 86% high school college enrollment is of the cohort. We have 78% are immediately after graduating high school, so no gap year, no work. 69% immediate enrollment is the national average, and then for low-income students, so in other words, a comparison group to those who have been in early college is about 55%. So that's pretty robust data and should give you some confidence that if you go about designing pathways that do have structure and concurrent enrollment included, that you can expect to have reasonably good results. Do people have questions at this point that you'd like to raise, either about the data, barriers, design things that have come up thus far? Yeah.
Models, I'm from the Big Borough Steel School of School Administration, so just some models that you would recommend looking at? Or you think things look pretty darn good?
Okay, so if you want to look at a whole district with early college, the Hidalgo district in South Texas, and we've had lovely funding to do a beautiful story about it. If you want to look at some curriculum designs, what particularly are you looking for?
It's a district model, so Hidalgo go down and...
Yeah, we also, this is an immodest advertisement for my organization, but we have a unit that does early college designs, and we work across whole school districts and have done a good bit of turnaround work. And Adelina probably knows more about that unit than I, but the design work includes whole district design, right? Yeah. So you might want to take a look at that. I will say, from all of the early college work we've done over the years in these many states, we did not go in for what the foundation world calls tight designs. So something like a KIPP school or one of the more structured charter schools. We had 5 basic principles, and I don't know if I can remember them, but they were about serving low-income students, providing supports, designed so that you could get an associate's degree in high school, reaching back to middle school, and I can't remember the 5th one. You can't either. It was definitely something good. So I don't think you want to have a tight model because, as we heard this morning, first of all, this is a state full of people who think they're unique. That's perfectly fine, but we heard a lot this morning about what I would call local control, and we don't centralize and all of that. So you want to get a good balance between what's left loose and what's tight, and some basic principles. So you could take a look at these basic principles that we used. Linked Learning, Connect Ed California has a set of principles. The NAF Academies have a set of principles. The Partnership Academies have a set of principles. And then there's a fairly robust literature now on good policy sets for designing and certifying vertical pathways. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, but I would not recommend that there be too much standardization. You might want to look at the Texas legislation where there are early college designations and see how tight that gets. Other questions? Yeah, or comments?
Yes. How about providing examples of programs that are truly integrating, especially CTE and core academic programs, not programs in the same building or in the same pathway, but where there's a system built in the school day where teachers can truly integrate, and examples of programs that you've seen.
Sure. Aaron, I'm going to call on you, or do you want me to just... So this is Aaron Pick from the Irvine Foundation, and I don't think Roman is in a different... Yeah. And are there other linked learning people here in the room? Christopher, I forgot you. One or the other of you. I think what I would say is that linked learning, which is this major long-term investment now from the Irvine Foundation, probably has the highest quality and the highest aspirations for integrating career and academic courses. I don't even like to use those words because it's actually interdisciplinary and applied project-based learning that we're talking about. And they have tons of free resources on the website, but Christopher or Aaron, do you want to say more about that?
I think in terms of looking at specific districts and models that are working, don't want to say one's better than another. There are several that have worked. The Linked Learning District Initiative has 9 districts, and there are now 4 mentor districts. One of which is in the room here with Antioch. I would say Porterville is a very good example of a district that went from not having a lot of pathways to actually having a goal to reach close to 100% of students in these pathways. Long Beach is another one that's been doing this work for a long time. They're both mentor districts as well. So those are 3 that have done this well, and Porterville being a good one because they started kind of close from scratch. But again, would say that has good resources on this in terms of what does fidelity look like, and I think that's what Nancy's getting at. How do you really have standards in place that truly show that this needs to be done, and to do it systemically, so it's not just one pathway here, one pathway here, that there's actually DNA across the district to do this, and that's why I provide those examples, especially with like Porterville. I mean, that's what they do, industry's bought in, and it is truly systemic, and hopefully now regional or districts around there.
Yeah, I don't know the Partnership Academies principles as well, although some of the Partnership Academies are also linked learning schools. But there is a Partnership Academies Resource Center at Cal Berkeley, and they've been in business for longer than linked learning. So actually, this state probably has more examples of good high school integrated curriculum than many other places in the country. What you don't have that other states do have is the vertical alignment, robust concurrent enrollment, and CTE programs that young people can access and succeed in. It's not that they don't exist, but they're not very accessible at this point. Oh, and Career Ladders, right. Who's here from? Yeah, so Career Ladders is also working on this very tough alignment set of issues. There's a person whose name I can't remember who leads the alignment work. Laurie Scolari. So for those of you who are, I'm anticipating the proposal writing given all these RFAs out there. There are very good resources in the state, both in Career Ladders, Linked Learning, Partnership Academies. Others of you know other resources. It may be that one thing you might want to do if you're taking notes here for the department, or Christopher, you're thinking about this, is that there might be a website put up quickly with a whole set of resources that people can tap into, a kind of one-stop shop where you aggregate some good examples, so that as the proposal writing takes place, people have a body of work to look to. Yeah, Christopher?
We've talked about this as a school or district level activity that could then connect to the region.
Right.
But given what's happening with the AB 790 linked learning pilots, there's no reason why any district has to take that path that Long Beach and Sacramento and that others have taken, which is district first, then region. The region could be the beginning in some ways for some of this pathway build-up to occur using that infrastructure. And so, in addition to the 9 districts that Aaron mentioned, there's another 50+ districts throughout the state that are in the CDE-led linked learning district-wide linked learning pilot. And so, but many of the folks in those districts don't know that their districts have don't realize that their districts have signed up, and so there may be other pathways, to borrow the term, into the pathway planning and development through those structures that are happening. In this region alone, in the 6 counties of the Sacramento region, there are 3 of those linked learning pilots. In East Bay, there's another 3 of those linked learning pilots. So there are a lot of those resources that are already starting to bubble up at the regional level that also exist.
Yeah, great. And we have about 5 minutes, and I realized that while I was thinking about the early 5 points, the principles that we had, were the core principles that everyone signed on to for early college, that we actually have a set here that have been expanded because those were written long ago and not for district or regional wide consumption. So if you look at your first page in the lower left-hand corner, there are a set of principles that are worth taking a look at, because I think this is in the spirit of what we see in the Pathways to Prosperity work is what we're trying to do. So the first thing, I think, is this issue of serving a broad range of students. As you heard from me talking about the international success stories, and you heard from Bob about the why people seem taken with the Pathways to Prosperity report, and from various people in the audience, we have to have a sense that probably most students would have a happier time and a more engaged time and a more successful time in high school if there were opportunities for applied learning. So I would not suggest that you think about this as a strategy for people who can't do academic work. That just feeds into the old stigma. So serve a broad range of students. And if you really think about it, I don't know how many people in this room have 3 children of their own? Are they all the same? So generally, if you have 3 children, one of them might be headed right for a PhD if you come from that kind of a family, and 2 of them, one of them might sort of like school and one of them might hate it. That's how, like, I have 3 children. One of them took about 8 years to finish college and probably never should have, not taken so long, but even gone to college. So the thing to think about is it's really the minority of students that are going to have the patience to sit through a totally academic program on into a graduate degree. So broad range of students. Integrating academic and CTE, and I like to think of it more as using applied learning techniques than making this artificial division between academic and CTE. There must be in some other language that I don't know a word that gets us away from this bifurcation. The third principle there is meeting Common Core standards and including 12 college credits. I would say from all of our work across the districts and trying to say what are the fewest college credits that will get you where you need to go, we've sort of settled on 12 college credits. And that would solve your 11 credit problem, because if you're going to get barriers removed, you've got to get rid of 11 credits if you think 12 is what it takes. And I think I said this before, but getting students through college math and making sure that there's variety in college math. And many community colleges offer much more variety in the introductory math, 4-credit math course than high schools do. High schools tend to have an old algebra, geometry, algebra 2 pre-calc pathway, and more, including distinguished mathematicians, as you probably know, are saying that we need to have multiple pathways through mathematics, statistics, for example, quantitative reasoning. And I think there's a good bit of work going on about that in California. But I would really say, if you're thinking about aligned to Common Core and including 12 credits, you need to be creative about the math courses and talk to your community college and 4-year partners about what the introductory math courses look like. And then embed support structures. We've talked about that. Someone raised the question of, do you want it on your college transcript? Well, yes, you want it on your college transcript if, starting in 9th grade, somebody has helped you understand what taking a college course entails. And by the way, I should say, with all due respect to college courses and the way colleges teach, given the resources, at least in my state, that go to community colleges, some of what students have to learn about going to college is, how do I sit in a class with 300 people, take notes for 90 minutes, and then write an exam and not have any contact with my teacher. So there are a whole bunch of things about college. They're not all the ones that your students might anticipate. We worked for a long time, we had a clinical site where we brought people who were working on early college designs in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I will always remember there was a wonderful guy he had a nursing degree and a science degree, and he taught literature, and he became the head of the school, but he worked with the seniors, and he used to say, okay, sit down, tighten your seatbelts, 90 minutes, don't say a word, take notes. I'm going to get you ready for college. That was one part of it. There were lots of other things that went on, but there are study skills and ways of coping with mass education that our young people need to learn. And then, so support structures we've talked about, and then finally for a principal, which I think is going to be key for any of the RFAs that are out there, is culminate in a credential of value to regional employers. So, and then I also included common planning time, expanded school schedule, which seems critical if you're going to build in work-based learning, and some hybrid coursework, in other words, technology and technology enabled, but perhaps with instruction as well. So I think we probably ought to stop there. I hope this was helpful. It's not exactly an intimate conversation, but it sounds like there are both good ideas out there and awareness of some of the barriers that we need to overcome. And I think you had some good listeners here who may have the power to be of some help as you move forward to make sure those barriers don't keep you from your goals. So thank you all very, very much.